You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. I'm hoping it shouldn't be it's like a mix of questions. Some of them I'll be amazed if you get, because some of them are pretty random.
Well, I would say, Ben, I've had 4 long drives in the last 48 hours, and I am well and truly sick of listening
to my voice.
Meet the Farmers podcast. I have just about had it. I think I've got through 14 episodes in the last 2 days, and I've just about had enough of it.
No
Look,
pressure.
we're taking this seriously, Sue. I don't know about you. You know, this is proper serious stuff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 225 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Now, it's the final episode of the year, and that means one thing, and one thing only. It's time for our big farming quiz of the year, in which we reflect back on the year's events in farming and otherwise, and ask our panel of guests a few questions along the way. And if you want to play along, all the answers will be revealed at the end. Let's meet the teams. On my left, we have team captain Sue Pritchard. Sue is the CEO of the Food, Farming and Countryside Commission, and she's also a livestock farmer from South Wales. Sue is joined by Ranald Angus, who has been on the show before. He farms arable crops in the very north of Scotland in Caithness, and he's also a Nuffield scholar. Ranald, how are you doing?
Not too bad. All the better for being here, I'm sure.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to have you, Scotland represented. And on my right is team captain Stuart Roberts. Stuart is an arable and livestock farmer from Hertfordshire who used to be deputy president of the NFU and now advises the Liberal Democrats on food and farming policy. And Stuart is wearing a very fetching festive hat and has quite a bit to drink as well, I think.
Well, not too bad. Ben, we got a bottle of mulled wine, and we're currently making our way through a bottle of sherry, which is going down very well. I think Sue's already finished hers by the looks of it. And if we get hungry, if we need any sort of snacks, we've got some Christmas gold chocolate. So, I think we're in for a good evening. And by the way, you can't quite see it, but I've got some Christmas penguins on my jumper as well.
I'm enjoying that.
So, yeah.
I'm also rather jealous of the gold coins. I think they might be... They should be the prize.
I'll send you some goals, Ben. I'll do that first thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Stuart's teammate.
Do I get a point for that?
No. Stuart's teammate is food and farming journalist Jez Fredenburgh, who is currently based at the University of East Anglia's Tyndall Centre as a knowledge exchange research fellow called the Agrifood for Net Zero Network Plus. It is quite a mouthful. Jez, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Do you like my... I literally picked something off the Christmas tree. I've got like some Pat Butcher type earring going on.
Beautiful.
They look really nice.
Beautiful.
A little heart and a rocking horse on my right ear. And I quite like Stuart's approach to this, which sounds like bribery with gold coins. So good.
Well, look, we ain't going to win any other way, Jez, so we got to try a positive approach.
I have every faith in you all. Are you all set for the quiz? I know that, Stuart, you've been revising.
Quiz. I thought we were here just for. I thought this was one of them Zoom Christmas parties or something. You know, the dismal work ones where you don't really get to meet anyone.
Right. Rules wise, you can confer with your teammate using the comments on Zoom. And I've got to actually admit as well, before we started this, I should have totaled up what the maximum number of points is, but I have no idea. So we'll just see when we get to the end. As you can see, a lot of work's gone into this quiz. But before we start the quiz, I just thought we could go around the room and just get your takes on the year so far. Stuart, maybe starting with you, your take on 2023. That could be at home on the farm. It could be broader issues as well.
Yeah, look, I think 2023 has been a strange year in many ways. I think for me, probably summed up, and Sue and I have talked. I'm going to get serious for something. This isn't good. But Sue and I, for years, have been talking about climate change, different weather, etc. And I think certainly I sit here. I've actually spent the day to day out in Norfolk talking to guys about wet weather, talking about weather conditions, talking to people who've not got any crops in the ground this autumn at all. And I think probably the thing for me will be, this is probably the third or fourth year in a row where actually we have started to properly see the impacts of climate change. You can't put this down now as a one-off weird year's weather. And all of that probably illustrated in, farming of the future won't be necessarily the farming of the past. And we're all going to have to adapt and change. And that was a bit too serious, Ben. Another glass of sherry.
We can have some serious on this. Maybe you should, have another glass. But it's true, though, isn't it? So, Sue, let's go over to you. Some of your key events, take-homes for you this year.
Well, I'm going to come in on the jolly side. I completely agree with Stuart. And if I wasn't wearing a pair of comedy antlers with a bottle of mulled wine, and I would be exactly saying the same thing. But there are two things this year that have actually given me a bit of hope about the future. And the first, we've been with citizens on our big citizen engagement project, talking to people in two places initially, but we're going to be taking it out much wider. Two places, one in Birmingham, one in Cambridgeshire, about what they really want from food, what they really care about. We hear all the time what consumers want and why politicians and governments can't do this policy because consumers don't want it, or the public don't want it. So we wanted to test whether that were true. And we found the most extraordinary, generous, optimistic consistency amongst citizens in both of those places from all backgrounds and all sorts of life experiences who really value the work that farmers do, who really want to see governments and businesses offering a fair deal to farmers. And they were really clear how the kind of balance of risk and reward needs to be shared out. So that gave me huge confidence that actually, when you talk to the public, when you talk to citizens, they really get the challenges of farming and the challenges of sustainable food production, and they back progressive farmers. And then the other thing that gave me huge hope, optimism and a raging hangover was the party at Groundswell when Andy Cato just nonchalantly did a set in the big tent, and Paul Cherry took pity on me by the hand to the very, very front, and I danced the night away. And tragically, there are, in fact, photos of that particular evening. So that cheered me up no end in what was otherwise quite a bleak year.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me. That was a real highlight of the year. Randall, let's go over to you. Highlights for you.
For me personally, being in the north of Scotland, I would say 2023 has been altogether not too bad. I mean, obviously, it's a very circumstantial thing, but when you're farming, the weather is a very prevalent trend, and certainly as climate change takes a hold, we are seeing more extremes. 2023 was quite possibly the hottest, driest, wettest, coldest year on record. So as we are seeing now, there is definitely a lot of people who have been very adversely affected by that. We, on the other hand, haven't so much this year. A lot of the very bad storms that took place just short ago largely missed that. And for us, we've had some challenging conditions, but overall it's been quite good. On the whole, I think there is room for quite a lot of optimism. I know some people will be feeling that it's been a bit much, a series of sort of impacts on them that has maybe led to believe that it's obviously quite a difficult one to take when you keep getting hammered with various challenges. But I think ultimately, going forward, the world needs farmers now probably more than it ever has done for the challenges that come. So looking forward to 2024 and beyond, it's a case of finding out what these opportunities are and making sure that we capitalise on them to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. Well said. And Jez, let's go to you finally before we start the first round. Run us through your highlights, maybe from an environmental sort of standpoint. But yeah, what's been happening this year?
I mean, it's interesting what everybody's saying, because in a lot of ways, the year has been, I think, incredibly frustrating on a political level, whether that's internationally or nationally. But at the same time, I think there's been some really, I think some really quite exciting stuff on a more grassroots kind of local level, when we're talking about things like tackling climate change and food system transformation. And there's question of like, where do we go with all of this? How do we build a better food system? And it feels like those traditional boundaries between different types of people are starting to be crossed a little bit, and people are starting to sort of come together and find common all of this stuff. But yeah, at a national and international level, it's been a mixed bag. COP28 is just coming to an end at the moment, and I'm sure we're going to talk about all that a little bit more later, so I won't go into it now. But there are some positive and some not so positives from all of that as well.
Yeah, we will be talking about COP. Right, I'm now going to see how much you can remember from 2023. It's time for round one, which is the 2023 round. And listeners, please, if you are playing along, grab a pen and paper or your phone and pop the answers down, and the answers will be revealed at the end. Question one, and again, you can confer between your team members using the chat. Question one, what famous tree in Northumberland was cut down this year? What famous tree in Northumberland was cut down this year? And there are two names that I'll accept for that.
I mean, I know which one it is. I mean, I know I can picture it really.
Write it down then.
Photo, but I don't know its name.
Right. Question two. The second series of Clarkson's Farm was released in early 2023. What is the name of this farm? What's the name of Jeremy Clarkson's farm in Oxfordshire? Question three. Which country won the Rugby World Cup this year?
Can I tell you a story about the Rugby World Cup?
Yeah, you can, Stuart.
So my 10-year-old and 14-year-old were badgering me that they wanted to go and watch the semi-final, okay? And I thought, I can't get there. Eventually, when France went out, so it's not France either, a whole load of tickets appeared on the resale site. So I thought, I'm going to buy three tickets, me and my two sons, and we'll drive to Paris, watch the game, drive. Perfect. Okay. Wasn't going to cost me too much. It was just about affordable. They're both rugby fans, so we'll do it. Then a mate of theirs says he's got a ticket, 3 rows in front of our 3 tickets. We travel all the way to Paris, petrol. And the 3 lads all want to sit together, his mate and my 2 sons. So I say, I'll take the single ticket, 3 rows in front, and I'll sit there, right? So I sit there 2 minutes before the game. No one. I'm thinking, I'm in luck here. I've got a seat I can put my beer on, nice and plenty of room. Perfect. Anyway, soon as the unbelievably drunk South African turns up, within 20 minutes of the kicking off, he is asleep and dribbling on my lap, right? At which point, I have just about lost the will to live. I turn around to my son's mate and give him the dirtiest look you've seen. Halfway through the second half, the South African wakes up and decides he's going to get through a few more beers and is asleep back on my lap by the final. The memorable game. Sorry, what was the question?
I think you already know, Stuart.
It's all right. I remembered it.
I'm pretty sure you know the answer to that one. Question 4. Who won the Great British Bake Off in 2023?
Oh, well, I have boycotted that ever since it left the BBC, so I do not know.
Who won the Great British Bake Off in 2023? I'm going to go through the next two quite quickly. Question 5. In July, which historical European city announced a ban on wheeled suitcases because of the noise they made? In July, which historical European city announced a ban on wheeled suitcases because of the noise they made? And I'll give you a clue. It's in the Balkans. And question 6, according to Baby Centre, what was the most popular girl's name in the UK in 2023? Be very impressed if you get that. According to Baby Centre, what was the most popular girl's name in the UK in 2023? And that is the end of the 2023 round. Are there any questions that anyone wants repeating? This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, Howden Rural, which is the new name for A-Plan Rural. The Howden team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. Howden Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences. And they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to Howden Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers.
I think we've done all right there, Jez. Feeling confident.
Good. Good. Right. Let's widen this out before the next round. And I'm going to turn to Jez on this. So 2023 is set to be the warmest year on record globally. Ranald insinuated to this earlier. And more than 160 countries were represented at COP in Dubai this year. So Jez, I just wondered if you could give us your reflections on this, maybe on COP in particular, and maybe whether there's been anything of note with regards to food and farming, why food and farming should matter when it comes to climate.
Yeah. So yes, Ranald's right that this year is one of the warmest on record, and in fact, the EU's Climate Observatory has recently said that certainty now that 2023 will be the warmest year on record, and that it's currently going to be 1.43 degrees above the pre-industrial age. So we're very near reaching that kind of critical 1.5 degree threshold that was enshrined in the Paris Agreement in 2015, that all countries agreed that we shouldn't get to 1.5 degrees of warming. So we're kind of very near reaching that now, which is worrying. And actually, just before COP began in Dubai, the UN warned that we might reach 3 degrees of warming this century if the world kind of continues along its trajectory in terms of gas emissions, meaning our very inadequate plans to reduce emissions. So even with the got currently, we would warm by 3 degrees this century. And it kind of almost sounds like a far off thing, but it's really not when you actually think about it. Someone born today would be 77 by the end of the century. And, this 3 degrees of warming is not necessarily going to happen then. So, somebody born today, if we carry on as we are, most likely going to experience that. And I think if we were going to carry on in that way, then potentially people in their 40s and younger, might well see something like that in their lifetimes. So I'm definitely thinking to learn how to grow vegetables under extreme conditions. Yeah, so COP this year, it's obviously been in Dubai, which has been quite controversial, big oil producing state, and the president of COP28 is also pretty big in the oil industry. They've just sort of working on the final text at the moment, and still all being looked over in detail. And there's going to be a few people are going to be staying around. A few people are going to be staying around for a few more days to try and thrash things out a little bit more. But the overwhelming reaction so far has been quite negative to the new draft text. Basically, it mentions action on fossil fuels as an option rather than a requirement, as a reduction rather than a phase out of fossil fuels, which is what everyone was trying to push for. So that's quite a big difference, obviously. There are some positives to have come from it. For the first time in history, food and farming is going to be included in any agreements going forward, in the sense that when nation states of this text, they also, by signing the text, they also agree to putting in place national plans of action where they say what they will do to reduce emissions and combat climate change. And this is the first time in history that food and farming as a sector has been put within those national plans of action. So at the moment, it's all quite vague. There are no specifics, but the fact that it's happened at all is quite historic. And I guess the big thing will be whether, maybe next year and in the coming years, can we kind of build on that? And, next COPs, can we become more specific?
Yes. Ranald, only because I know you have an interest in this, and I know your Nuffield was on carbon. As a farmer, do you think we're moving fast enough?
Probably not, Ben. I mean, certainly for me, I attended COP26 in Glasgow, 2021. That took place 2 years ago. And there was a real sort of sense that we were going to move forward on things, and there was going to be some sort of reasonable change around it. They all hail the Paris Accord as the real sort of game changer, that everybody came to the table and decided that they needed to act. And certainly when I was in Glasgow and speaking to people, there was a bit of hype about things that, change was going to happen type of thing. However, fast forward then about 6 months, and we were faced with the war in Ukraine, where you had, a massive sort of change in the mindset of just having resources, be it fossil fuels or grain or fertilizer or whatever it was, just simply survival instinct, I guess, to just procure any form of energy at any cost. And that has ultimately, I think, still filtered through now, where, the environmental thing is maybe slowly coming back. But again, if we face, which I think is going to happen fairly soon, that you will start to see economically a lot of these big countries like us, United States, Europe, all these sort of developed countries, if their economies start to see a little bit of a dip, which is, I think, on the horizon, then again, that's another pushback on actually trying to do something meaningful for climate. But I mean, ultimately, we have to fix the problem. Kicking the can down the road just means that it becomes a harder task to try and grasp when we do get further down the road. But it is possible, as we saw in the response to COVID, that when we really put our minds to it, we can come up with a solution. However, I don't think at this moment in time, even with what you're seeing on the TV and what is happening around the world and what people are seeing and experiencing, it's still not enough to actually get people to think, right, we actually need to do something about this. And until we reach that crossroads that people actually feel directly impacted by it, that's the only time, I think, when there'll be enough sort of societal pressure on governments and on business to really do something. And I think with what we've been through, we're not at that point yet. We've maybe even gone slightly back, maybe sort of 2 steps forwards and 1 step back, if you like, compared to where we maybe were a few years ago.
Meet the Farmers is brought to you by RuralPod Media, the only podcast production agency to specialise in the rural sector. We're on a mission to make rural stories mainstream and help businesses, organisations and communities like you tell your story through podcasting. Podcasting is a fantastic way of connecting with your audience, whoever that might be, getting your message out there and networking with leaders in your niche. RuralPod Media can help you by launching your new podcast or helping you with the technical side. We also provide podcast training and an audit service if you already have a podcast, you're not sure where to take it to next. For more information or to book a call, visit ruralpodmedia.co.uk. That's ruralpodmedia.co.uk. Let's lighten the mood a bit with another round. The listeners' round is round 2, which is pretty much the farming round. These are all farming related questions. And thank you very much to everyone who sent in a question. The first is from Mr. Russ Carrington, who I've got to give a shout out to because he was the most listened to episode this year. Thank you everyone who listened to Russ's episode. So the question is, Russ's question is, love it or hate it, the European Common Agricultural Policy has and will continue to have a large bearing on British agriculture. But when was it first launched? A, 1962, B, 1975, or C, 1985? Question 8, and this is from Millie Fife. Which cattle breed holds the record for the oldest herd book registration? And that's 1 point for the breed, and 1 point, if anyone knows it, for the name of the herd book. Question 9. The average, and this is from Mark Jagger, the average feed conversion ratio of a pig, according to AHDB pork, from 7 to 110 kilos is 2.41. Very technical here. How many kilos of food does the pig eat? And the nearest will get the point. So you don't have to be exact. It'll just be the nearest team will get the point. I'd be very impressed if you get it exact. Question 10.
Can I use a calculator?
You can use a calculator. Yeah, that's fine. Question 10, which is from Joe Stanley. What percentage of UK greenhouse gases comes from agriculture, according to the most recent data from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy? I'm not sure whether that department actually exists anymore. Anyway.
Say that again.
What percentage of UK greenhouse gases comes from agriculture, according to the most recent data from BEIS? And the nearest will get the point. And the last one in this section, which is from Tom Carlisle. How many stomachs does a cow have? And for 4 bonus points, name them.
Oh!
So here's a chance to get some points. Grand. We had a question about the EU in that one. And even though we're out of the EU, there's a lot going on over in Europe. And one thing that is been in the news recently is that, because quite a lot of disagreement, the European Commission recently announced that it is approving the use of glyphosate across the EU for another 10 years after member states failed to reach an agreement. Sue, I'm going to turn to you on this. What does this mean for ag for the next decade, do you think?
I think this is a really knotty problem. Some of the really interesting work that the Regen, No-Till, Min-Till Brigade are doing at the moment relies on glyphosate, but the evidence for quite detrimental impacts for glyphosate is increasing. It's a really, really tricky one. I don't think we're going to be able to put off pondering the serious consequences of continuing to use those chemicals across the farm landscape and across food crops. I'm an organic farmer, and I kind of have already made the personal choice to avoid using those kinds of chemicals. I think, you can tell, can't you, by my response that I find this one really, really tough. It's the solution that's not going to be a solution for very much longer, and we're going to have to lean in, whether or not Europe does it. We're going to have to lean in to thinking about alternatives to spraying crops with a chemical whose properties are starting to become even more seriously questioned.
Stuart, I'm going to go to you. I mean, you must have engaged with this issue a lot over time with your various hats on. What's your take on it at the moment?
Sorry, I was just texting Jez about the average weight of a pig in the UK. Sorry. What was the question again? Glyphosate.
Yeah, your take on glyphosate at the moment.
Yeah, look, I'd build. So first of all, I think it was absolutely the right, sensible decision. And I think for me, I listened very carefully to Sue on some of this stuff as well. But so I'm an organic farmer, but I'm actually personally at the moment considering whether I should stay organic, because actually I think I'm starting to be sustainable by taking the best of the organic system, but also the best of a conventional system. And when I see what some of these guys are doing around new tillage techniques, etc., I can't do that on my farm. I'm not a good enough farmer, but actually, so therefore my system plough. Whereas actually, I'm starting to question whether I would more sensibly glyphosate yet less plough, and which of those two is more sustainable. But ultimately, we do need to be led by science on these things. And I think glyphosate, unfortunately, has too often been hijacked by either by groups that have their own vested interests, or those that just seem to have a passionate hatred of big agrochemical firms, and therefore actually have picked on glyphosate because it's an easy thing to pick on. I think also when I was over in the States last, which was just before lockdown, and I see a 2-hour program which is basically designed by lawyers to get people to join a class action against Monsanto on glyphosate. The whole thing is now not about science. It's unfortunately about money. So personally speaking, I think the decision was the right decision. But I also think where I slightly worry is actually just because we've had it reapproved for the period we have, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at alternatives. I think about ammonium nitrate, for example, which is another really good example. Somebody said to me the other day, the best thing, so ammonium nitrate, the Haber-Bosch process, has arguably been one of the miracles of mankind. It has let us feed the population that's grown over the last 50 years. It's been absolutely fantastic. And without it, starvation around the world would be horrendous. And we would have seen things that none of us on this call can even imagine. But actually what we should have done is the minute we invented the Haber-Bosch process, we should have been putting research money into how do we not need the Haber-Bosch process in future. And to some extent, actually, getting, 10 additional years for glyphosate is really, really good as I see it, for two reasons. One is we need it. I actually think it's an important chemical in agriculture. But what it also does is it buys a period of time to which you can then work up systems where you can use less of it or you don't need it. And I think too often what we've done, and I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, we're really good at kicking cans down the road or burying things in the long grass. And actually what we need to do is not just use the 10 years to rub our laurels and think how in 10 years time will we argue for another 10 years. We actually use a period of time to think about what are the alternatives so that actually we can all benefit from a more sustainable system going forward. Sorry, I didn't listen to the question, but I think that was the one, wasn't it, Ben?
I think so. I can't remember now. Stuart. Anyway, well, we're going to get moving.
And I've remembered some of the names of the stomachs as well, actually, whilst doing it.
That's the real reason you went to. Okay.
Yeah, if I look, you know me, Ben. We've done enough podcasts over the years. I can talk for hours, right? Now, all I'm doing is spending that time to then figure out the answers to questions you asked me 10 minutes ago.
In that case, we should move on to the next round, I think. The next round is the podcast round. And this one, I mean, Stuart will definitely get this and some, I think. But question 12 is name 3 guests who have appeared on the Meet the Farmers podcast this year. Any 3 guests at all. Question 13. Which former radio DJ and Surrey farmer appeared on Meet the Farmers this year? Which former radio DJ and Surrey farmer appeared on Meet the Farmers this year? Question 14. Name any agricultural event that was featured on the podcast this year. Any agricultural event. Question 15. Suffolk farmer and former barrister Sarah Langford featured on Meet the Farmers in February this year. But what is the title of her recent book? Suffolk farmer and former barrister Sarah Langford featured on Meet the Farmers in February this year. But what is the title of her recent book? And that is the end of the podcast round.
I like that round.
Yeah. Stuart would have done well there. That's when all those hours and hours of listening came into fruition. Just a little more about our primary sponsor, Howden Rural, which is the new name for A-Plan Rural. Same people, different name. Howden Rural provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit howdeninsurance.co.uk/rural. Start to round this up, being sort of optimistic, I suppose, and I'm going to ask you all this. Can you give me one thing that you're hopeful for next year? Sue?
Good question. Well, we're going to have an election this year, one way or another. It might be in May, it might be in October. And one of the things that I'm feeling more hopeful about, that the work that lots of us are doing now, lots of us on this call, this podcast, as well as loads and loads of other people, that farming and food is going to rise up the political agenda, and we may well have an incoming government with an appetite to start to tackle those big food systems issues that are so central to so many other policy objectives, so many other policy intentions, like, you know, food resilience, food security, like health, like land use, like farming livelihoods, like action on climate, action on nature, trade policy, our place in the world. And I'm starting to feel that we've got starting to see some traction amongst the sensible politicians, that it is now high time to start to act on those things. So I suppose that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm focusing on. 24.
Jez, what are you hoping for?
Well, much like Sue, really. I mean, I'm really, really wanting a change in government. I think the state has really got very bad. Just today, there was a report out saying that, you know, in the UK, we're on the edge of ending up a sort of Dickensian sort of situation with Victorian era levels of poverty and inequality, which is just, frankly, it's just shameful. Say it like it is. You know, it's just shameful. And, you know, alongside all of that, we've had, you know, our Prime Minister rolling back on net zero commitments, sort of saying that it's all about sort of cost of living crisis. But really, when you actually ask people, like Sue was saying earlier, you know, when you actually ask ordinary people away from the Westminster bubble, people are actually really want government to take leadership on all of this kind of stuff, on climate change. And things like taking action on net zero, like insulating houses, things like that, will actually, positively impact people dealing with the cost of living crisis the most. So it's completely fictitious to kind of blame it on people. At the same time, another thing we've not talked about this in terms of big headlines this year was all the stuff around river pollution. You know, it's just been awful. It's been really shocking and upsetting, actually, I think, for a lot of people in this country. It's just time and time and time again, this lot just seem to, I feel, just take a wrecking ball to our country they just don't care, frankly, I don't think. So I'm really hopeful that they are booted out and we end up with, like Sue was saying, whoever it is, maybe it's a collection, I don't know, of different, maybe it's a hung parliament, I don't know what it will be, but some politicians who have some serious guts and can look beyond the Westminster bubble and actually sort of, show some leadership that I think most people really want now.
Okay, 2 political hopes. Ranald, what are you hoping for? And that could be big picture, it could be on the farm.
You want a controversial answer, Ben?
I always want a controversial answer. Go for it, Ranald.
Right, we'll go for Scotland winning the Euros in 2024. And on the theme of your question earlier, we'll say that the reapproval of Roundup or glyphosate in the UK, for me personally, I think it's a bit of a win for common sense that it's been reapproved. Because the thing is, Sue's probably right. Like, the direction that we're travelling in the future as farmers is definitely going to be one where we have less answers that come from cans and bags. But the problem is, until we have a solution that is there that is ready to use, I think we have to use a chemical that is proved to be quite a safe chemical. I mean, the reason everybody's up in arms about it is because the World Health Organization, their cancer research agency in 2015 said it was a carcinogen, which it is, but it's the same level of carcinogen as sunlight. So there is an argument for using it. And also, you have to, I think, look at this as a good example about a lot of things that are happening in farming right now. So there's lots of things that, be it, GMO things or things or that nature, organic farming, they kind of fall into a bit of a kind of lifestyle category, as in some of them, there's not much fact about whether it's good or it's bad, but the fact is people don't want it. So if people say they don't want it, we as farmers have to listen to their message, and understand why they don't want it. There's lots of things that are factual. If you have nitrates going into groundwater and things like that, as Jez is suggesting, or if we are decreasing the humus in our soils, that's a fact. It's bad for the climate and things like this. So, I think at the moment there's a lot of pressure to try and ban things very quickly without actually understanding why it is that we need to ban them, or why, what pressure is causing this to come about. And, up here in the north of Scotland, or over a lot of Scotland this year, there was a lot of crops that went in the spring very late, and it meant that harvest was delayed. And there will be a lot of crops in Scotland that if the solution of using Roundup wasn't available, there would be a lot of crops that were just simply written off. And that would have quite a big environmental thing to go with it. We have to kind of take a sort of pragmatic view with things. I mean, yes, like any chemical, you probably don't want to use it as much for the cost as for anything else. We have to have a sort of tried and tested method, and very much like Stuart's predicament, what do we do if we don't have these things? Because there's a lot of farming in the world, and they're using it purely because the no-till thing allows them to avoid soil erosion and the like. How would we go about farming these places? Because they simply don't lend themselves to ploughing. A lot of the UK does lend itself to that type of agricultural practice, but there's lots of things in farming that fall into this category of sort of getting a bit of pressure, but at the same time there's not really a proper solution as to how we move forward. And perhaps in 2024 we'll maybe start to see a bit of a progression to get in some answers in some of these issues, because ultimately as farmers we would all like to progress and move forward and find better ways of doing things. But unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all answer with a lot of these things.
Thanks, Ranald. And just before we go to the final round, Stuart will give you a word on this. Perhaps with a farming slant, maybe what's going to be making the farming headlines next year, but what are you hoping for?
No, I was going to go for two non-farming ones. I'll start with them and then I'll give you a farming one as well. So there's always a danger when Jez and I end up on a Zoom call. We somewhat reinforce each other's political views, I think is the case. So I'm absolutely with Jez. Getting rid of what I think is the worst government I've seen in my lifetime is definitely high up there. The other thing I would really like to see, and I fear I won't see it actually in the next year, is I'd love to not see Donald Trump be the Republican presidential candidate. I suspect I will be wrong on that one, but I think that's what I'd like to not see. Maybe I might see a new job for myself, but we'll just leave that hanging there because I who knows what the next 12 months hold for me. And I fancy doing a couple of marathons. I'm actually planning on doing 2 marathons in 24, which would be quite interesting. From a farming perspective, what I would really like to see is I would like to see people stopping jumping on religious bandwagons. And it doesn't matter whether that is, and Ranald started some of this a minute ago, and I think he's absolutely right. we've got some brilliant farmers in this country. I genuinely believe we've got some of the best farmers in the world in the UK. Some of them are organic. Some of them define themselves as regenerative. Some of them define themselves as conventional. Some of them define themselves in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. And I get fed up with people trying to park themselves in boxes. And actually what we need to do is we need to do what I think actually we started to see. I did one of the panels at Groundswell. It was fantastic. At one point, Richard Benyon, who is certainly a Conservative minister I have quite a lot of time for, actually, did try to describe himself as the owner of Englefield, which is an average farm, to which I pointed out, if Englefield is an average farm, then my farm is in the bottom 1%. But the reality is, I thought at Groundswell this year, actually, we started to see lots of different groups coming together. So it isn't organic versus conventional, regenerative versus the chemical can, etc. And I think actually farming is always much worse off when we all try to park ourselves in different camps. And what we don't do is we don't come together and celebrate what we can all bring to the best food producers in the world, the most sustainable environmentalists in the world, and definitely the best farmers that have ever inhabited this planet.
That's brilliant, Stuart. And it's one thing that we definitely try to do on this podcast. All farmers, all types, everyone has a voice. Let's hear them all. It's time for the final round, which is, as always, general knowledge. Everyone's favourite round.
Right, this one's yours, Jez, right?
Tell you what, Stuart, that was quite a good summary there. You could nearly even say that your mission for 2024 could be to make agriculture great again.
Well, there you go. I could even get some red caps made and put it on the front, couldn't I? There you go.
Red cap.
Well, I'm hoping there'll be a whole load of Make America Great caps floating around with no home to go to. So maybe if we just make them, MAG, then we can have them ourselves. And as you say, let's make agriculture great.
Question 16. What is the largest organ in the human body? What is the largest organ in the human body? Question 17. A history one here. In which year did the Titanic sink? And the nearest will get the point. In which year did the Titanic sink? Nearest gets the point. Question 18. What is the capital city of Poland? And question 19 is a film one. Who directed the film Avatar? Those are your 4 random general knowledge questions. What do we think of those?
Some and some.
Yeah. Well, good. That's what I wanted. Oh, Sue liked those. Sue liked those.
We're just communing in the chat and things that I'm not sure about. Okay. Ranald is sure about, so that's very good.
Good.
Yeah, this is going to be like Who Wants a Millionaire. I'm going to have to give a sort of impromptu call.
Right, we're going to go through the answers.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I have the answer to question 1, which is what famous tree in Northumberland was cut down this year?
Do I get a bonus point for drawing?
Oh, nice. I like the fact that you've written and drawn things.
Very
no
sweet.
bonus point.
Oh, okay, for goodness sake.
I've had Sue's answer through.
Oh, sorry, hold on.
Come on, Stuart.
Yeah, hold on.
You've both got a point. It's the sycamore gap tree. Anyone playing along at home, I would also accept the Robin Hood tree. That's also allowed. The sycamore gap tree or the Robin Hood tree. Question 2. The second series of Clarkson's Farm was released in early 2023. What is the name of the farm? Yep, a point for both. That's Diddley Squat Farm. Question 3. Which country won the Rugby World Cup in 2023? Answers, please. Yes, Stuart's right. And Sue's right as well. It is South Africa, who beat New Zealand 12-11. A really good game. Number 4, who won the Great British Bake Off in 2023?
Well, I struggled with this, but I drew some cakes. So you got a wedding cake. I drew your birthday cake.
No
and
points
look,
for drawings.
I drew a chocolate log as well.
Oh my God, Ben, you have to give Stuart bonus points. Look at his effort.
No.
I'm really pleased with that, Steve.
Well,
Come on, look
Stuart,
at that. You're
I'm going to
log.
give you both. I'm going to give you both half a point because you both said Matt.
Yeah, but I drew a chocolate log and a wedding cake as well.
No, half a point.
No charade, Stuart. Come on now. It's a quiz.
You both said Matt. It was Matty. Yeah, Matty Edgell.
Oh, couldn't remember his bloody surname. Oh,
No.
go on.
Question 5. In
next
July,
one?
which historical European city announced a
Oh,
ban
no,
on
sorry.
wheeled suitcases because of the noise they made?
Right, I am not going to
city.
spell this right, okay?
You don't need to spell it right. It's fine.
Oh, I'm blaming Ranald now
Stuart gets
because
a point.
I was going to go somewhere else, but
Oh, Sue and Ranald said Prague. It's actually Dubrovnik. That is good knowledge, Stuart and
that
Jez.
wasn't my
Well
alternative.
done.
So no.
It's Dubrovnik. And question 6, according to Baby Centre, what was the most popular girl's name in the UK in 2023?
I'm just making a stab at this.
Yeah, we just had a guess at this.
My knowledge is about 5 years
Well, you've
old.
actually both said Olivia, which is really interesting. It was actually Lily. So no.
Oh no!
Lily was
My
the most popular girl's
Daughter's
name.
middle name is Lily.
I'm pretty sure Olivia did feature in the top 5, but it was Lily. The listeners round. Question 7. Love it or hate it, the European Common Agricultural Policy has and will continue to have a large bearing on British agriculture. But when was it first launched? Which year was it first launched?
So
A, 1962.
The original. You mean the original launch, not any of its.
It's just getting all technical now.
It's getting technical, but so got both your answers. You're both correct. It was 1962, but it was first proposed in 1957 as part of the Treaty of Rome. But it was 1962. The cattle breed that holds the record for the oldest herd book registration.
So this is a complete.
Yeah.
And you get a point for the breed.
So
I'm
disagreeing with Ranald, but just because.
If we've got it wrong, can I tell you what the alternative was? Because we had an argument over this one.
Yeah, we're having an argument.
So Stuart and Jez have said Hereford, and Sue and Ranald have said White Hart.
I've got Hereford.
And my alternative was Shorthorn.
Oh, no. Well, it was Shorthorn. Shorthorn was the answer. Yeah, and it's the Pope's herd book.
Come on.
No,
wrong.
I'm not allowing that. Wasn't the actual one you put down.
So mean.
Okay, the maths question that everyone loved from Mark Jagger. The average feed conversion ratio of a pig, 7 to 110 kilos, is 2.41. How many kilos of food does the pig eat?
I'm going to go with this one, just because I think the answer's a trick.
Was Ranald's 265.1? Is Ranald's 265.1?
It says, Ben, that's my maths. Yes.
Okay, so Ranald is the nearest. So Sue and Ranald get the point. It's 275.
Oh, my Lord. How?
How?
Good maths.
Well, it's quite simple. You've got this pig and it's weighing 110 kilos. So if you multiply it up by your feed conversion factor of 2.41 or whatever it was, that's the rough numbers you get then. But then obviously at 7 kilos and below, the feed conversion will be lower, but I don't know what that is. So that's my guess.
But I took a different interpretation. So mine was it's the category of 7 to 110 kilos. The average dead weight of a UK pig is 60 kilos. 60 times 2.41 is my answer.
Okay, I like that. This has suddenly turned into countdown.
I think AHDB need to give us a clarification on this.
Stomachs, Ranald, stomachs. I've only got two.
Whoa.
Hang on.
We've still got a percentage.
We've got Joe's question first, which is what percentage of UK greenhouse gases comes from agriculture, according to the most recent data from BEIS?
I think it might be about.
Stuart and Jez are bang on, which is a good thing for Jez. It's 11%.
Oh no!
Sue and Ranald said 12. So Jez and Stu get the points. The stomachs now's the opportunity for lots of points. There's 5 points available. So how many stomachs does a cow have, first of all, and can you name them?
I mean, I've got to write these down.
I will have a stab at it, Ben. I'm just trying to type it here, but if no, I'll
I can't remember the fourth one.
Stuart and Jez get 4 points.
Ooh, that's all right.
Oh, well done, Stuart.
And Sue and Ranald get 5 points. Very good.
What's the fifth
So
one?
they are the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, and the abomasum. Or abomasum.
My
Yeah.
God.
God,
It's very close, guys.
dredged
This is
that
good.
one up. Although, did you get them
Yeah,
all?
but if
Did
you'd
you-
given me that bonus point for my chocolate log,
Oh,
we'd
he
be
was
ahead
good.
by
Oh,
I
I
just-
didn't. I
It
didn't.
was fantastic.
was
Ranald
very
got
good,
them
though.
all without me making a faff about it. He was just quietly, calmly typing them into the chat.
Question 12. We're on to the podcast round. Name 3 guests, any 3 guests, who've appeared on the Meet the
I'm
Farmers
writing my
podcast
favourite ones
this
actually.
year. Nice.
So
Yep.
these are my favourite
Stuart and Jez
ones.
get 3 points. Oh, brilliant. 3 points all round. Question 13. Which former radio DJ and Surrey farmer appeared on Meet the Farmers this year?
Got that one.
Yep, that's points all round. Hugh Broom. Name any agricultural event that was featured on Meet the Farmers this year. That's question 14.
We went for this. Well, we could have picked a few, but let's go for this one. Although I should say
Oh,
this one
nice.
as well.
I like that, Sue. Yeah, so Sue and Ranald have said Open Farm Sunday. Annabelle Shackleton came on for that. And Oxford Real Farming Conference. Yes, that's
which
fine as
Sue
well.
Pritchard came on for.
Oh, there we are. Yes, you did.
Oh.
You actually did. Yes, Sue was a guest
Ranting
this
in a
year.
corridor, probably.
The Suffolk farmer and former barrister, Sarah Langford. What is her book? Rooted, Stories of Life, Land, and a Farming Revolution. Yeah. They're all. And the general knowledge round. The largest organ in the human body is. Oh, okay. So Sue and Ranald got my answer, which is skin, which is the correct answer. It's not intestines.
Oh. See, I think this is incorrect because I feel like we've all heard those facts, something like if you were to unravel the human intestines, they would
Not
cover
an organ,
like
though.
10
No, it's not an organ.
or something.
The intestine's not an organ.
Of course it is. Why is it then if it's not an organ?
Proof is needed, Jez, that you can't always go with your gut.
Oh, nice one.
Oh.
Like it. Question 17.
That
The
joke
year
is
that
evil.
Titanic sank. When did the Titanic sink?
I got
The
this one
nearest
wrong,
will
but
get
luckily,
the answer.
luckily,
Oh my goodness, you're
Ranald got
both
it
bang
right.
on. 1912.
yes.
Very good. Capital city of Warsaw. Nearly said it there.
Oh,
Capital city of
thank you.
Poland. I mean, thankfully, you both got there first. It is Warsaw. And finally, the director of Avatar.
Oh, again, thanks to the young folk for this one.
Yeah, very good. Points all round. James Cameron.
say?
I think you've both
oh,
done really well. Both teams have done really well in this quiz. I'm just here. Talk between yourselves. I'm just going to tot up.
If
see
we
who's
haven't won this because of that chocolate log,
if you have
I-
won it,
I-
I'm going to be
that's
calling
it.
Swizz. I'm going to be calling
this is
inside Swizziness.
So, I did some basic maths and totaled up the scores that I'd been noting down as we'd gone along. I announced the winner as Stuart and Jez, who were, of course, overjoyed for winning the most important end-of-year farming podcast quiz in the world. Why wouldn't they be? But almost straight away after announcing the result, something didn't feel quite right. My gut was telling me something was wrong. So while Stuart and Jez were cracking open the champagne and Sue and Ranald were wiping the tears away, I went back to the team's answers and did a recount. What I discovered wasn't exactly ideal.
Oh,
My
well.
goodness, guys, hang on. I've just done a recount. I'm gonna have to blame my maths. Hang on.
whoa.
Steward's inquiry.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, the result has been
14
announced.
15 16 17
What?
I knew it.
I don't believe this.
Oh, Ben,
I've just cocked everything up.
what have you done?
I actually have. I've been an idiot and have put extra points on.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
that's for my
Stuart,
chocolate
Stuart,
log,
tell
which is
us.
fair enough.
So we have a different result.
That's a joke. It's an absolute joke.
Outrageous, Benjamin.
It already called the
Can we
result.
I can't believe that.
What's a joke?
I'm very sorry, guys.
That is
Dear.
just
Oh
shocking. That is, Ben.
God.
That is fantastic. That's going on my media scene right now in a whole cliffhanger.
I'm speechless.
In my defense, okay, it had been a very long day and I was quite a few glasses of mulled wine in at this point, but still, I don't think I'm ever going to forgive myself for this. And I'm pretty sure that it'll take a long time for Stuart and Jez to forgive me if they ever do. What a way to end the year. Anyway, always trying to be the professional, at least so I thought, I somehow got my composure back enough to do the outro. Anyway, a huge thank you to all my guests today for coming on the show. That is it for the podcast this year. That is it for Meet the Farmers. We'll be back following the Oxford conferences in the new year, as I'm taking a few weeks off now. All that's to be said is a huge thank you to our primary podcast sponsor for this year, Howden Rural Insurance, who started supporting the show this year. To all the guests who have spoken to me this year, and of course to you, amazing listeners. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you continue to listen week in, week out. And if you can do one thing, it would mean a huge amount to me for Christmas. It would make my Christmas. Please, if you don't already, subscribe to the show, put a comment wherever you're listening, and even better, if you're feeling really generous, post about the show on your social media, tag us at MTF Podcast. But yeah, the biggest thanks though from me right now go to our panelists, Stuart Roberts, Jez Fredenburgh, Sue Pritchard, and Ranald Angus. For now though, thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from all of us here, and I hope you'll have a great Christmas. I'm wishing you all the best for 2024. I'll see you in January.
The steward's inquiry on this is going to be like the COVID inquiry.
You're absolutely right. It's just going to be a whitewash.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was good fun.
Good fun.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.
Cheers all. Happy Christmas.
Happy
Bye.
Bye all. Bye.